This week on Ask Noah, Noah talked about many different things, but the one thing that Nate and I zeroed in on is the Synology disk station. Now, Noah was bringing this up specifically regarding their surveillance station software that they have. And for those of you not familiar with Synology, the disk station is a NAS, network attached storage system, essentially like a little server. And it has a disk array, and depending on which one you get, it could be 3 disks or 5 disks, or geez, I think they have bigger ones than that. And then depending on which one you get, the processing power and the memory that's available. So they're spec'd differently for different use cases. I've had a Synology NAS for 5 years or so, and it's been flawless. It works perfectly well. It's never not worked. It's never had an issue with updates, and they are pretty frequent with their updates. It has an unbelievable array of software that is available. Noah mentioned the surveillance station, but it has programs that'll let you share your files, share your music, share your videos. It has server-based software, so you can run proxy servers, you can run DHCP servers, you can run a Docker environment and run Docker containers. The list goes on. There's so many different pieces of software that you can run and processes. It's like having a small server. And again, it's not going to be server class hardware where it's a really heavy duty capable processor and tons of memory. So think of it in terms of an appliance based system, where if it's something that a router could run, or it's a little better than that. I mean, it's more capable than just an appliance, but I wouldn't have the expectation of it being exactly like a server. But they do such a good job with all their packaging and all of that stuff. I know people would probably prefer to run FreeNAS or maybe build their own systems, and that's great if you want to do that. But in terms of just off the shelf, buy it, stick some disks in it, and set it up, Synology is pretty amazing and tough to beat in that respect.
This was the first I actually heard of Synology, or maybe it was last week is the first I ever heard of it. After the show was the first I actually looked into it because of how he kept talking about the surveillance station. And I don't have any cameras up in my house. Yeah, maybe I shouldn't announce that to the world. But so I don't have any cameras that you know of in the house. And I couldn't help but be curious, though, about maybe that's not a bad idea. There's, I don't live in a high crime area, and not a whole lot goes on in my little sleepy half-horse town. But there is something to be said for just, maybe having that front door covered on the house, with a camera. I've just kind of been noodling around some thoughts on that, but, haven't done anything with it. And the way Noah was really selling it, I know he wasn't selling it, but the way he was selling the idea of it, really got me thinking, because it's open as far as you can use whatever kind of camera system you want. It's not locking you down into anything. And the price structure is as such that it's affordable. And although I like to do, free and open source software whenever possible, I have no problem paying for something, like Make MKV or whatever. I really want to dig further into this now because, of Noah's review of it, or at least dig into some options. Could that surveillance station, can that portion be paid for? I don't know any of this stuff yet. I mean, I'm just starting to look into it. Or, maybe getting some sort of a Synology system alongside what I have now as my home server for surveillance. Maybe just doing just that one thing on it. Just because I'd like to just watch and see what happens. How many squirrels are chewing on my cables or whatever on the outside of the house too would be nice. But it just makes me think. What are the options out there? Or or maybe Synology isn't the right choice for me. Maybe I just need something with Home Assistant that would work through there. I really don't know. So I'm just now starting to explore IP cameras, surveillance for my own home, because I think that, it's just not a bad idea to have that, for peace of mind, for security. If you're away from home too, being able to check up on things, what is the dog doing? I don't have a dog right now, but, is the dog getting on the counter, or whatever, just for, security, peace of mind, and so forth. I really want to start moving in this direction and learning more over here. So I'm going to be listening to see what else he has to say about it. And I'm also going to start doing some of my own research to figure out, if this is the right solution for me, because it sounds really good.
The only time I ever felt a need to have an IP camera was when my daughter was young, and particularly when we first started having her sleep in her own room by herself. And when you're a new parent, it was my first child, when they're too quiet, you kind of freak out a little and wonder, is everything okay? So I did, at that point, I thought, maybe having an IP camera, especially with infrared lighting, so that you could see in the dark. But beyond that, I just, to be honest, I'm home most of the time. I work from home. I'm here most of the time. I agree with you. When I used to travel or when I've been on vacation, it would be nice to be able to see what's going on and just make sure things are okay. But it's not something that has had a tremendous amount of appeal to me. And also when I look at the commercial options that are available, like Ring to me is an absolute nightmare.
I totally agree. Everything about that frightens me.
Oh, it's horrible. The way that they provide that to law enforcement, and that's fine. I mean, I'd like to think that if you had one and something happened in front of it and it could help somebody, great. But I just have that sense that that's not exactly how it's going to be used most of the time. And the last thing I want is to feel like I'm spying on my neighbors because I've got this always on video feed that's going back to some,
right.
Who knows where and who knows who sees it.
If I had a camera too, I'm fine with providing that information to law enforcement, but I want to be asked for that information. I don't want them to just have it, if that makes any sense.
No, it does. And I think that's probably how it should be. But the idea of if you did want to have personal surveillance stuff in and around your home, I would only ever consider doing that if it was on my own network and never broadcasting outside of there without my express permission to do so. The idea that something's always on, and I also have the same problem with personal assistants and like smart speakers, and I don't. To trade some modicum of convenience for that sort of invasion of privacy, I'm not going to go there. And I'm not a privacy nut. I'm really not. I don't look at, telemetry data, or I don't look at, yes, Facebook tracks me, but I know how to mitigate that. Like those things, I know what they are, but I go to them and I make the choice. If I have something just sitting in my house that can listen to me or can watch me, and then that data goes somewhere that I don't know, like that is, I'm sorry, that's a bridge too far for me. I cannot cross that.
Agreed.
People love their smart speakers, and God, Ring is huge. I mean, it's everywhere. And it just seems like a door that once it's open, I just don't see how you stop that. And I think you and I have actually talked about where if you're out in public, you don't have a reasonable expectation of privacy, right? I mean, yes, there's cameras everywhere, and like that's just the way of the world. And I don't have a problem with that because that's, you're in public. I don't love the facial recognition stuff. I think some of it's a little creepy, but the idea that it exists and it's for the greater good of everyone, okay, I can deal with that. And because I've made the choice to go out in public, but for, for being in my own personal space and not really knowing what's going on with that data and who's listening. And we keep seeing these stories about people having access to things they shouldn't and maybe doing things they shouldn't. Not for me. So anyway, if you look at Synology and it's a fit for you, great. If not, there are lots of other options. But I really love that Noah's also in that same mind where he's just like, this is my sanctuary. I cannot have that penetrated by the outside world, not because of any nefarious activity, but because it's my space. And you don't live here. This isn't your space. This is my space.
Right.
And
exactly. Yeah, it's MySpace. Yeah. MySpace. Remember that? For me, it's the same thing. It's the same reason why I use Linux. I have to have what I perceive as mine. I have control over. I want to be able to trust my house, the things in my house. I want to be able to trust my computer. I want to be able to trust any IP cameras that might exist in my house.